Welcome back to the Sanctuary of the Grieving Goddess. I am she. This is a place where your reality is allowed, where the truth of your grief doesn't have to be hidden behind small talk, performance, or pretending to be okay. Today, we're talking about something almost no one prepares you for: what it feels like to grieve when you can't stop working. Because not everyone gets to collapse, not everyone gets to take time away, not everyone has the luxury of disappearing into their pain. Many of us had to get up, wipe our faces, and go to work while our hearts were still breaking. Working through grief is not just showing up to do a job, it's showing up to other people's lives while your life feels like it ended. It's answering phones with tears still drying on your face. It is greeting customers when you haven't had a full breath in days, smiling at strangers while you crying your car on your lunch break. It's living two lives at the same time, the public one and the shattered one. There's a contradiction in working through grief that hurts in a way that is hard to describe. You are expected to perform at the exact moment when your spirit can barely stand up. And what makes this kind of grief brutal is the pretending, the forced cheerfulness, the hi, how's your day going? The surface level jokes, the customer conversations that feel like they belong to another universe. And the worst part is how normal everyone else's life looks. You find yourself surrounded by happy families when yours has been altered forever. You're asked to celebrate other people's joy while your own joy has nowhere to go. Even if you take the anniversary day off, the days before and after are just as painful. There is no such thing as back to normal when that date is permanently carved into your heart. So you work through the ache, you work through the dread, you work through the memories, you work through everything you cannot explain to a coworker who was just a stranger to you months ago. Here's something people never say out loud. You can't call in broken. You can't call your manager and say, my heart is gone today. You can't tell your supervisor, I cried all night, I can't think straight. Or, I woke up already in tears and I don't have the energy to pretend today. You still have to show up and perform. You still have to meet metrics. You still have to smile. You still have to hold conversations while hearing nothing but memories in your head. You have to be functional when you're not okay. And even when you manage to take the day of the loss off, no one tells you that the days leading up to it and the days after it are often worse. Because grief is not a date on a calendar, it's a cycle in the body. Grief follows you to work in your body in a few ways: fatigue that feels like gravity, fog that complicates simple tasks, disassociation that makes hours disappear, sensory overload, the noise, the lights, the crowds, shaky hands, no appetite, the numbness, the rage, the sudden tears, the hollow feeling in your chest. Your body is busy surviving while your job expects you to cost efficiently engage. Sometimes grief makes you feel like you're watching yourself from outside your own life. You see your hands working, you hear your voice talking, but you don't feel any of it. And that's not laziness, that's trauma trying to make space for breathing. What makes work especially painful are the casual conversations that feel like a punch to the stomach. You meet someone who shares your loved one's name, someone the same age, someone talking about their mother, their son, their husband, their sister, without realizing that they are touching a wound. And all you can do is keep a polite smile while your spirit is disintegrating inward. You become skilled at emotional regulation in public spaces, not because you're strong, but because you have no choice. People often think grief is sadness. They don't understand the anger that comes from being forced to go through the motions in a world that keeps going. And that anger shows up in the drive to work, in line at the coffee shop, in meetings that feel pointless, when people complain about tiny things, when someone talks about weekend plans as if weekends still exist for you. Anger comes from the absurdity of pretending everything matters when the thing that mattered most to you is gone. Work can feel like betrayal, like pretending life is normal when nothing around you is. And here's the truth many grieving workers discover most workplaces care about performance, not people. They care about numbers, not nervous systems. They care about productivity, not pain. Most of us never got the support we needed, not because we didn't have coworkers, but because we didn't have understanding. And the few things that would have helped grace for mistakes, flexible hours, someone quietly covering a task, a manager who says, do what you need, space to step outside and breathe, acknowledgement without pity, help with the little things. Those are rarely offered. So many of us learn to survive grief in performance mode. If you are listening to this from your car before clocking in, or during your lunch break in silence, or alone in a bathroom stall, I want you to hear me. You are doing something holy. You are choosing life in a moment that feels unlivable. You are loving your person while performing work that feels meaningless in comparison. You are surviving while no one sees it, and that is not weakness. That is devotion expressed in motion. You are showing up because the world doesn't stop for grief, and you needed it too. What I learned on my own journey is that work can be two things at once: a distraction and a spiritual burden. Some days it keeps you moving, other days it feels like punishment. Most days it is both. And it is okay if your relationship with work changes after a loss. It is okay if your career is no longer feeling like your identity. It is okay if your goals start to feel foreign. And it is okay if your ambition goes quiet for a while. It's okay if joy feels far away. None of that is failure. It's grief rearranging your priorities. If you feel numb at work, that is your nervous system protecting you from being overwhelmed. If you feel detached, that is your mind giving your heart space to process what it cannot speak. If you compare yourself to who you were, remember, the person you used to be never knew this version of pain. You are learning to breathe again in a world that no longer feels safe. That is not weakness, that is adaptation. I want to take a moment and read the Compassion Insight from Chapter 5 of the Foundations of Grief workbook. Grieving while working is one of the most invisible burdens. You're expected to function, perform, and stay present while carrying a loss that has taken so much from you. This creates a painful tension. Your job needs one version of you, while your grief is pulling you into another. Understanding this helps release the guilt of not being fully focused or productive. Your energy is divided because your heart is divided, and that is human. When you can't stop working, grief becomes something you hold in quiet moments, in the car, at your desk, between tasks, or in the breaths you take before facing people who have no idea what you're carrying. This isn't weakness, it's endurance. Every day you manage to show up at all is a quiet act of strength, not because you're unaffected, but because you're surviving while hurting. Let this insight remind you, doing just enough is still doing. Your capacity will shift. Your heart deserves grace. And even in the busyness of work, your grief still matters. And now I want to ask you gently, how can you offer compassion to yourself on the days you have to work while your heart is still grieving? You don't have to answer that right now. Sit with it, feel what rises, and speak your truth when you're ready. This season, we reflect together so that we can approach our grief with softness instead of judgment. If this episode opened something inside you and you're carrying feelings you don't have language for yet, the Foundations of Grief Season 1 workbook was created for these moments. Not as homework, but as a private space to be honest, to put your pain somewhere safe, and to breathe between sentences. To write the things that you can't say at work. The link is in the bio and in the description if you need that kind of space. Working through grief is not about pretending you're okay. It is about learning how to exist in a world that didn't pause when your heart broke. It is about surviving the hours, the days, the anniversaries, the triggers, the moments when your body remembers, even if your calendar doesn't. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the grief that comes back out of nowhere. The moments when you're having a normal day and suddenly your heart drops, like it's the first day all over again. Not because you failed to heal, but because love has a long memory and grief is how it speaks. Until then, please be gentle with your grief. Be gentle with your body, and be gentle with the version of you who is working and grieving at the same time. You are not alone, not here, never in this sanctuary. Welcome to the sanctuary.